On this episode of the CyberWatch podcast, a new data breach exposes more than 800,000 records. Windows computers remain tempting targets, hackers hit healthcare again, and the forecast is cloudy with a chance of data theft. All this today in the CyberWatch podcast. Hello, and welcome to the CyberWatch podcast for the week of November 3rd, 2024. This is your weekly roundup of the top cybersecurity news and analysis curated by the analysts at Access Point Consulting. I'm your host, Curtis Franklin. Let's get to the news. Now, here on the CyberWatch podcast, we've talked about supply chain attacks, where a supplier is targeted in order to get data from or have an impact on many different companies or individuals. The latest example is a recently disclosed data breach of Landmark Admin, a company that performs back-end processing for multiple insurance companies. The breach exposed personal data, including social security numbers, tax identification numbers, driver's license information, and medical records for more than 800,000 individuals. According to Landmark Admin, when the breach was discovered in May of this year, they immediately shut down the servers and closed external access, none of which prevented the criminals from getting back into the network and continuing the attack. Landmark Admin has notified individuals affected by the breach and offered a year of credit monitoring and identity theft protection. Analysts note that a robust program of patching and updating software, multi-factor authentication, and encryption of sensitive data, both at rest and in transit, are techniques that all companies storing PII, or personally identifiable information, should use to defend that sensitive data. Microsoft Windows remains the world's most popular operating system, so it comes as no surprise that Windows-based systems are the frequent targets of cybercriminals. In this week's news, there are 4 separate stories about breaches, attacks, and vulnerabilities involving Windows. In the first, Microsoft warned customers that a Russian nation-state threat actor known as Midnight Blizzard is conducting an ongoing spear phishing campaign against a variety of targets, including government agencies. If Midnight Blizzard sounds familiar, it's because that is the same organization responsible for the infamous SolarWinds 2020 attack. In the new campaign, targets receive email messages with a signed RDP, or Remote Desktop Protocol configuration file, to gain initial access to the target's devices. The malicious messages come from legitimate email addresses and seem to be engaged in data harvesting on behalf of Midnight Blizzard. This is a wide-scale attack, though Microsoft says that there is heavier activity seen in the UK, Europe, Australia, and Japan. In response, analysts recommend multi-factor authentication, leveraging phishing-resistant authentication methods such as FIDO tokens, and tightening Microsoft 365 configurations to make the criminals' jobs as difficult as possible. Next, a new zero-day vulnerability in the way Windows systems transmit NTLM tokens could allow a malicious actor to capture token hashes and gain access to protected systems. The frustrating thing about this vulnerability is that Microsoft has already addressed the issue twice. The vulnerability basically allows an attacker to coerce the targeted system into sending the hashed token. The vulnerability lives in the system's theme files. These are files that allow users to customize the appearance of their Windows desktop interface through things like wallpapers, screensavers, colors, and sounds. While the new vulnerability doesn't require special privileges on the part of the attacker, it does require action on the part of the user, opening a folder and then opening a file with a specific type of preview enabled. While not a high-priority vulnerability because of this difficulty, Microsoft says they're aware of the possibility and will act as needed to protect their customers. Unfortunately, if that protection takes the form of an update, this next technique could spoil the party. A new Windows Update takeover vulnerability could allow attackers to roll back updates, downgrading the targeted system to a vulnerable version. A researcher has exploited vulnerabilities in the Windows update process to create a tool called Windows Downdate that enabled downgrading critical OS components, including the NT kernel and virtualization components. They also bypassed Windows security patches, compromising fully patched machines and exposing them to old vulnerabilities. Now, protecting against this technique requires some reconfiguration of the client system in which administrators enable UEFI lock and the mandatory flag for VBS using registry commands. Finally, on the Windows front, researchers are warning that Black Basta ransomware affiliates switched to Microsoft Teams, posing as IT support to deceive employees into granting access to their systems. It's a two-step attack in which threat actors first flood an employee's inbox with emails, then impersonate IT support on Microsoft Teams to offer help with the spam issue. After gaining access, attackers deploy malicious files, including proxy malware and Cobalt Strike, to deepen network infiltration. Experts advise restricting external Microsoft Teams communication and logging suspicious chat activities to improve security. Shifting our attention from Windows, cybersecurity researchers recently discovered that Evasive Panda has been actively attacking cloud services to steal data using a new toolkit. Evasive Panda is a Chinese APT group actively conducting cyber espionage operations since 2012. This group primarily targets organizations that resist China's interests. The new toolkit, known as Cloud Scout, is noteworthy since it contains modules designed to compromise Google Drive, Gmail, and Outlook cloud services by stealing authenticated web session cookies. This enables the threat actors to bypass both multi-factor authentication and IP-based security measures. Analysts say companies should verify their end-to-end connections to ensure no man-in-the-middle attacks are underway. In addition, standard recommendations around patching, multi-factor authentication, and user training still apply. If that weren't enough fun on the cloud computing front, the Docker Gatling gun, a large-scale campaign by the notorious hacking group Team TNT, has been seen and described by analysts. In this new campaign, Team TNT uses native capabilities in cloud environments to append compromised Docker instances to a Docker swarm. They've also introduced new Sliver malware, a solid step up from their previous Tsunami backdoor, which enables advanced command and control capabilities over multiple protocols, including HTTPS and DNS. Once established on a victim system, Sliver allows Team TNT to engage in resource hijacking, lateral movement, credential theft, and much more. Analyst recommendations for protections are straightforward. Ensure proper security settings and configurations for Docker instances within their application and network. In addition, continuous network monitoring will be needed to detect any unusual activity being committed on the network. Finally, some very dangerous and advanced tools are being used in new ways to commit cybercrime. The Health Sector Cybersecurity Coordination Center, or HC3, of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services released a threat actor profile on Scattered Spider, a financially motivated group that's been active since at least 2022. The group has become known for their advanced social engineering techniques, including voice phishing and leveraging artificial intelligence to spoof victims' voices to obtain initial access to targeted organizations. Unlike so many of the nation-state actors we've been talking about here on CyberWatch, Scattered Spider is a native English-speaking cybercriminal group thought to mainly consist of individuals between the ages of 19 and 22 based in the United States and United Kingdom. Scattered Spider members are known to have leveraged targeted social engineering techniques during campaigns. And while their social engineering skills are quite good, their operational security levels are not on the same level. It's a number of their members have been arrested. Still, authorities are concerned because the group's tactics seem to be evolving as they use more tools related to ransomware and extortion as part of ongoing and new campaigns. The FBI and CISA suggest organizations defend against scattered spider by implementing application controls and multi-factor authentication, and by strictly limiting the use of RDP and other remote desktop services. Well, that's it for this week. Please join us again next week for the CyberWatch podcast, brought to you by Access Point Consulting. Visit CyberWatch on LinkedIn and at www.accesspointconsulting.com. I'm Curtis Franklin. We'll see you next week.